Choujinrou Senki Warwolf is a weird one. Even though it's a mediocre action game, there's quite a bit surrounding it. A translation of the title would be The Legend of the Ultra Werewolf Warwolf. I would have thought that the pun would be obvious, even to Japanese speakers, but I guess they really wanted to make sure that people knew there was a guy who turned into a wolf in this game. I thought I was done with Data East 8-bit games, but they managed to sneak this prime example of Dekoge past me. Dekoge being the term that players in Japan used for the awkward, not quite right games that came out of Data East. I wasn't wrong to say that Data East was done with their 8-bit division, though. Warwolf was designed for the American market and was released in the US in 1990. Data East distributed it there, but apparently had no desire to release it in Japan. However, when Takara picked it up, they apparently decided to rework large sections of the game. So as I'm playing this, if you're going, "That's not the Werewolf I remember playing," well, that's why. I also need to explain a little something about my recording process. Because Famidaily is, well, daily, I try to stick to an hour of playtime for each game. That lets me have time to do additional research, write and record this voiceover, and edit the video. I'm mentioning that time restriction because I spent from about minute 10 to minute 50 stuck on a single level. It's one of the more absurdly unfair bits of game design and feels like it was solely put in to frustrate people and prevent them from finishing the game too quickly. But what that also means is that I don't have as varied of footage as I'd like. The plot of the game is that on the Earth colony Red Earth, Dr. Gordon discovers a source of mutagenic evil. Using it to turn his minions into super beings, he takes over Red Earth. The only one who can stand up to him is Ken, a descendant of the Ultra Werewolf clan, and he'll use his ability to turn into a werewolf to stop Dr. Gordon. Ken has to fight through 5 stages to defeat Dr. Gordon, taking down his minions like the Slime Man, Fire Man, and the unstoppable Iron Head. Hang on a second, that Iron Head guy looks a bit familiar. Well, I'm sure it's just a coincidence that that guy looks like the Juggernaut. It's not like they're using the Brood as enemies in the game. Oh, they are using the Brood as regular enemies. And Hellfire Club soldiers. Japanese players noticed these similarities themselves and considered Warwolf to be an American comics style game. Even the last boss looks suspiciously similar to Magneto. In Warwolf, B attacks and A jumps, but there's a whole lot more you can do than that. Ken starts out as a normal human, and you have to collect a red W in order to turn into the Warwolf. Ken's movements are relatively limited. He can jump, punch, jump extra high if you hold down up and hit A, and his one super move is if you hold down the B button until he flashes, and then release it, he'll fire a beam. Note that you can't push left or right as you do this, even when you're trying to shoot. The Warwolf gains a lot more powers from his blade hands. The damage from his attacks are doubled. The Warwolf's power-up attack is a screen-clearing explosion, but it happens to do 8 damage to the Warwolf. But the real advantage here is the additional mobility he gets. The high jump goes even higher and turns into a somersault, and if you hit A and B simultaneously, you do a backflip where you're invulnerable for a few moments. I actually found the backflip move tricky to use because you do a bit of jumping during it as well, and it's easy to accidentally trigger it when you don't want it. The Warwolf can also cling to surfaces. Just jump into a wall to stick to them, even if you don't want to. Once you're on the surface, you can just climb up and down freely, and you have to jump away from the wall in order to get off of it. Pressing up and attack while you're jumping will do an upward thrust that also happens to let you attach to the ceiling. Then you can walk along the ceiling for a ways. And the Warwolf gains the ability to crawl through small passages. Usually you do this because it's a way to avoid enemies or find additional power-ups. Power-ups can drop from enemies when you defeat them, or be found inside objects on the stages when you punch them. The most dangerous one is the blue W, which instantly turns you back from Warwolf form to Ken. You'll also transform back to Ken when you're down to about 1/4 health as the Warwolf. If you collect one of those icons while you're Ken, then you take 10 damage. Hearts will restore health, of course, and money is solely used for points, although it's a bit difficult to see your score. The score does allow you to gain extra continues, as do the 1-ups that are hidden throughout the world. You only have 1 life in Warwolf, and you start with 5 continues. Hourglasses give you 50 more ticks on the clock, which is more useful than it seems because stages appear to be designed around you not having enough time. The small red balls are an explosion that destroys all enemies on the screen, and the big red balls turn you invulnerable for several seconds. You'll know you can't be hurt because you're gray. The small clear bubbles build up your anger. Once you've collected 5 of them, you turn into the Ultra Warwolf. The Ultra Warwolf is golden in color, moves faster, jumps higher, and can hit for extra damage. The effect wears off after about a minute though. I can't say I really liked how the character controlled. Things seem to be a little bit stiff and unresponsive at times. But my real problem with Warwolf is the level and enemy design. And no, I don't mean how they took everything from X-Men. The stage design seems to come from the school of throw big things at players and hit them in ways that they can only avoid if they know it's coming. If you like things suddenly dropping out of the sky on your head, this is the game for you. The worst part of this is at the end of Stage 2, where lightning bolts just shoot out of the sky at you when you cross certain points on the screen. Which points? You can't tell until you cross them. And the lightning is almost impossible to avoid. It kills you instantly too, so your first several lives on the stage are just going to be walking along, getting struck by lightning and going, "What? What happened?" There are plenty of invulnerabilities hidden around to help you avoid it, but it's still not very fun. But the boss at the end of it is also a good example of really bad design. He shakes the screen when he punches the wall, and that stuns you regardless of where you are or if you're in the air. You just get stunned. You can destroy the objects that fall out of the ceiling that he'll throw at you, but his hitbox doesn't seem to really be centered on him, and he can grab you out of the air sometimes, and sometimes he just walks back and forth on your horizontal position until you die. It's really unfun. Warwolf seems to be weirdly well remembered in Japan, although not really well regarded. Okay, I did find one person who called it a masterpiece. I can't say I agree with that viewpoint. Warwolf is just too clunky to be a lot of fun. I think it's better than the US version, but that's such a low bar to clear that it's not worth talking about. To me, the most interesting things in Warwolf are the weird choices that they made. This game is a mess, but at least it's an interesting mess.